What's up, NBA fan? What's up, all sports fans? This your boy JB, host of the Behind the Bench podcast network channel, giving a shout out to the rest of the crew. And for everyone who's tuning in, thank you for supporting Behind the Bench. Subscribe to the channel and help make the show the best that it can be. Now, let's talk about another hot button topic. The face of the NBA. Who's going to be the new face of the NBA? Who's the current face of the NBA? And it's funny because as I look back on things, and it seems like it's an easy answer, man. It's an easy answer. There's so much young talent in the NBA. It really is. And this decade is playing out pretty much how I expected. I didn't really see the way things were shaping up. I didn't see a team out there that would go on a consecutive final appearance streak of 3 times in a row, 4 times in a row. I don't believe it's going to be I don't think it's going to evolve in that manner. And it's because of what has taken place over the past decade or so. There's a direct correlation. And when you pose this question, or when this question is posed by the talking heads or people covering the NBA, they're losing track on one thing, man. First of all, you cannot manufacture something like that. Let me give you a perfect example. Grant Hill, when he entered the NBA in 1994, he met the criteria, man. Because number one, Michael Jordan had retired. So they were trying to find someone who can fill that space as the next, as they say, top dog, as they say. Grant Hill had the pedigree and the resume. He played all 4 years of school, college, University of Duke. He won 2 national championships back to back in 1991 and 1992. And as a senior, he led the Duke Blue Devils to the national championship game as an underdog, only to lose to the nation's best team, the Arkansas Razorbacks, when Nolan Richardson was head coach, and Big Dog Corliss Williamson and Scotty Thurman were the top players on the team. And they unleashed that full court press. And I'm telling you, man, college basketball was so good, and man, it was frightening, man. I loved it. And it was on equal terms with the professional basketball. So by the time a college player entered the pros, they already had a large support of fans who already knew who they were, and that was the beautiful thing about the NBA then, man. It was a very a natural process, from high school level, college level, and I'm not talking about one and done either. I'm talking about like guys playing on average 3 years of school, and then they enter the pro ranks. Well, Grant Hill, he had the personality. He had everything that would attribute to, being promoted as that type of player. But it was something that he said, man, that really stood out. This was after Michael Jordan returned back to NBA in 1995. And he had so much respect for the game, Grant Hill. And he was a hell of a player. In his prime, before the ankle injuries, he was a top 5 player in the league. Top 5, bar none. First team on NBA. He said, look, I'm just paraphrasing. He said, look, I know that, that the league is trying to promote me to be the face of the NBA. But he said, look, I don't have Michael Jordan's game. I don't have his jump shot. That was Grant. That's the same Grant Hill that was dropping 25 a game, 7 rebounds, 7 assists for the Detroit Pistons, leading them to the playoffs in his 3rd year, right? And he said that he respected the game. And a lot of times when players like Allen Iverson Allen Iverson was a tremendous talent. He was a tremendous basketball player. But because of this perceived image, there was a lot of antagonism and cynicism about his place in the league. You know what I'm saying? But I was always a fan of Allen Iverson. He played hard. And I always thought, me personally, I thought he was better in college than pros. I thought in college, in 2 years in Georgetown, I thought the guy, man, was phenomenal, But nonetheless, the ironic part about what's going on now is they continue to try to push a figure to be the face of the league because his name is always brought up and he's talked about, verbatim around the clock. But there's still a void in principle as to who's going to be the next face. But what they lost track of, whoever became the face of the league, they did so by winning. Michael Jordan. He was the best individual player in basketball during the late 80s. Matter of fact, after his rookie season, he was already considered a top 5 player. Technically, after his rookie season, when he averaged 28.2 points a game, 6 assists per game, and 6 rebounds per game, he was already viewed as a top 5 player. But he was not identified and viewed as the game's best player until he won a championship, which is the way it should be. That's the way it should be. Right? And then once he started winning, it wasn't really about him even being the face of the league, man. It was bigger than that. It was bigger than that. Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, they were the torchbearers, the standard bearers of the 80s, man, because they were winning, man. And people can say, okay, they had a lot of talent around them, man. But see, they were drafted to those teams, man. They were drafted. They wanted joining forces, man. See, that's the thing. And their contribution to the game, Magic and Bird, is still talked about to this day, man. Kobe Bean Bryant, right? Kobe Bean Bryant. He had to go. First of all, he entered the league at 18-year-old. Lauren Marion High School, but he had to pay his dues, man. He had to be an understudy to Eddie Jones his first 2 years with the Lakers, coming off the bench, because Eddie Jones was a tremendous player in his own right. He was an all-star level player, 2-time all-star. And only when Kobe proved that he deserved that starting spot at the 2 guard, at that point, that's when they moved on from Eddie Jones. It wasn't like anything was decided prematurely. Right? So now the NBA is at a crossroads. They're trying to find a face of the league. But the problem is, this is the real problem. They want to boast of the presence of the international players, that the international player is more successful now than any time during the league's history. But they only want to recognize them only to a certain point. They don't want them to be the face of the league because they're international born, even when they're winning. Giannis Antetokounmpo won the championship in 2021, leading the Milwaukee Bucks to their first championship in 50 years since 1971, led by Lou Alcindor, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and Oscar Robertson. Right? And I believe Lucius Allen. Giannis did everything right. He didn't form no super team, right? He stayed, even when they was trying to push him out of Milwaukee. He led that team, a small market franchise, to the championship. And he did it in grand fashion. leading the team back from a 2-0 deficit versus a very damn good Phoenix Sun team that advanced to the finals for the first time since 1993. And the finals generated good ratings, man. And he had, to me, the greatest closeout game of a championship series in the history of the NBA. 50 points, 15 rebounds, 5 blocks, shot 17-19 from the free throw line. He did that, man. And it was so great because they said the next day, he drove around town in Milwaukee, man, sharing the trophy with the fans there, with the people there, of the city of Milwaukee, man. He did everything right, man. But they didn't promote him, man. The league did not. They talked about him for about 3 days. Then it was back to the same old conversation. Beating the dead horse, man. What does so-and-so need during the off season to put him in position to win? It's an insult, man. Giannis, that was about to enter his prime. He won coming off of back-to-back league MVPs, Defensive Player of the Year, the most dominant player in basketball, right? And they didn't promote him, man. So it's been opportunities to establish a new face of the league. Right after he won, they did the same thing with Nikola Jokic. Nikola Jokic led his team, the Denver Nuggets, to their first championship in franchise history. First player to average a 30-point triple-double during the postseason. And he has one of the coldest nicknames in the history of the NBA, the Joker. You know what I'm saying? And he beat superstars along the way to reach the finals. He beat Kevin Durant. He beat Devin Booker. He beat LeBron James. He beat Anthony Davis. He outplayed him. He ended the season as the best player in the league. Right? And they didn't celebrate him, man, like they should have. They talked about it for about 3 days, and it was back to the regularly scheduled program. Right? Then you have up-and-coming talents, during the time where they started to ascend up the ranks in the NBA in terms of standings. Memphis Grizzlies with Ja Morant, 2 seed for 2 years straight, right? And I know Ja Morant had off-court trouble, but I'm saying they still didn't promote him and his team the way they should have. Luka Doncic, right? They talk about him, man, but it's kind of like, it's still hesitancy to promote an international born player. Even when Luka led his team to the finals last year versus Boston, right? Or we could take it back to an American player, Jason Tatum. Jason Tatum won his first championship of his career, helped lead the Boston Celtics to their 18th championship in franchise history. So he should have been a top dog, right? Going into the Olympics. And what did they do? He barely received any playing time on Team USA. Do you know how disrespectful that is, man? And even now, the Celtics, their record is like 22-6. 22-6, and they barely make any mention of him, man. He has to be one of the top 5 leading candidates for league MVP, along with Jokic again, Giannis, players of that level, and he's not getting any recognition, man. And they wonder why there's so much cynicism. They wonder why the ratings are declining where they are, because they're not promoting the league right, man. And it shouldn't be based on who you want to be the face of the league. It should be based on whether or not they are achieving and whether or not they are winning. Cleveland Cavaliers, league's best record, right? Best record in the league. Barely any mention. How will people know about other players if you don't promote them? And that's the difference between the NBA of today versus yesterday. During the 90s, man, during the expansion period, like the wave of expansion from 88 up until like 90, let's say that first wave of expansion up until like 95, that period, Michael Jordan was on top of the world. He was winning them championships. But they promoted all them young stars in the league. They promoted Larry Johnson. They promoted Lonzo Mourning. They promoted David Robinson. They promoted Shaquille O'Neal. They promoted Penny Hardaway. They promoted AI. You know what I'm saying? Even the high school players coming in. They promoted Kevin Garnett. They promoted T-Mac. They promoted Kobe. You know what I'm saying? They did a brilliant job. And they promoted the players and the prime players, the Charles Barkleys, the Patrick Ewings, the Keem Olajuwon, the Clyde Drexlers. You can go on and run TMC of Golden State, Mitch Richmond, Chris Mullin, Tim Hardaway, Malone and Stockton. You know what I'm saying? Pippen, Scottie Pippen, they start, featuring him in commercials. Everybody was getting shine, man. KJ, Kevin Johnson. You know what I'm saying? So you didn't necessarily have to worry about who the face of the league is. It came down to who was winning. Whoever won by season's end, that player was the celebratory figure going into that next year. Deservedly so. That's why when you say champion, man, when you win a championship, well, that year you stand above everybody else. Dirk Nowitzki won the championship in 2011. He beat a super team. They talked about him for 2 days. And no sooner than when his team plane touched back down in Dallas, they started talking about the Miami Heat again, man. And they coming off a loss. So now you change the pendulum, you shift the dynamic, you start to devalue winning, and you start to value who you want to be propelled in front of everybody else. And that shift in focus has curtailed the league dynamic. It's curtailed it, man. So they need to get back to basics. Once this super team era is over, man, whoever wins the championship by season's end, that should be the celebratory figure during that summertime, going into that new year as the defending NBA champion. That's the way it's supposed to be. That's the way it was always. When I say that, I'm not exaggerating. 83 finals between the Philadelphia 76ers and the Los Angeles Lakers. Lakers was going for a repeat, right? Well, Philly, led by Moses Malone, when he say 4-4-4, he outplayed Kareem Abdul-Jabbar in the finals. He outplayed him. So when Philly won the championship and he was voted Series MVP, Moses Malone, by season's end, he was celebrated as the league's best player. See, that's what I'm saying. It shouldn't be about stats. Although, I mean, okay, of course, stats is going to reflect what type of ability that you have throughout the course of a season. But winning, that's a whole nother level of achievement. That's why they have championship rounds. If it was just based on ability or statistics, you would never have a postseason to determine who's the best. There would be no need for it. That's why we have it. You see what I'm saying? So, like I said, over the past 4 years, even Steph Curry, when he led Golden State to the championship in 2022, he probably got a higher profile than Giannis and Jokic because he was an American player. But even then, they may have talked about him for maybe, instead of 3 days, maybe 4 days. Then it was right back to regular schedule programming, man. And you can't roll like that. You disrespecting the game when you do that. You see what I'm saying? Even if you have a favorite player, if they don't win, man, you can't sit there and try to gas them up until they prove otherwise. That's why they call it competition. The competition is to determine who is the so-called face of the league or the leading figure on a year-to-year basis. So I just want to drop that nugget real quick. Until next time, JB, BTB, behind the bench.